The only thing you could do to mitigate risk is to build skills that are transferable and to stop thinking about industry first and start thinking about competency first. In many ways, when I look back at the stuff I've done, the secondary thing was the job, and the primary thing was like, what is the skill that I am honing while I'm doing this? Like selling shit, right? You know, if you learn how to sell, doesn't matter if you're selling haircuts or computer chips or houses or whatever it is you're doing, right? The set of principles that make you a good salesman remain the same. Be personable, understand what the problem is, articulate it in an incredibly compelling way, provide great service, blah, blah, blah. Your ability to contribute is based on a skill set that would be valuable in another place.
Welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. You got the NIA boys here today, Jack Butcher, Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi. We got the AMA Ask Me Anything leftover questions from a couple of weeks ago. Some really good ones we didn't get to and some really fun ones. Let's get straight into it, boys. This one is thoughts on the greatest invention in the last 100 years. They said and last 10. Let's just go 100 years.
Wow.
This could be a whole episode. So let's start off with the fun. And you might need time to think. But I feel like Trung, you got a few in your head already for this one.
Your boy Trung hit barely.ai for a quick hit up those large language models for a couple. So let me throw a couple out there. I'll throw a couple out there and let you guys debate it. The three that I was given, I asked for the 10 greatest inventions ever, period. So I'll list off to you what I got.
Yeah.
I got electricity. So that's 19th century. The wheel, 3,500 BC. I love that. I
prefer this question. I prefer the wider question of all time.
But let's do both. We'll do both.
Yeah.
The printing press, 1440. I have very strong feelings about this one. The internet, so that's 20th century. That was developed via DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency of the United States. Penicillin, 1928. Underrated. Vaccination, 1796. A little bit controversial in the years since. The combustion engine, late 19th century. Here's one, big one. Semiconductor chips, mid-20th century. Steam engine, 1712. Agricultural revolution, 10,000 BC. So anyways, I'll throw out these three if you guys had any others. Three for this past century. Internet, penicillin, and semiconductor chips. Which one would you pick of those three, or another one?
I'm going to say...
Go on, Jack.
There is no second best invention of the last 100 years.
Are you saying Bitcoin?
Jesus Christ.
You
Jack Butcher has to keep it on brand here. There we go.
In the bed. Dude,
Bitcoin beats antibiotics.
Bro,
it beats transistors.
It beats the internet, which enables it.
It's so ridiculous.
Jack. There's no way, dude. Okay, yo, Jack's. I don't know if he's shitting me. Are you
Jack,
serious? Okay.
Jack's being...
Boys, come back to us in 100 years. Come back in 100 years and we'll do it.
I love when just for people who know, when I asked Jack, how would you describe the NIA podcast? He said with a straight face, it's like what did you say? It was something along the lines. It's a parody podcast. And that's when you said that, I was like, that's the perfect way of describing the pod.
Dude, Jack's
brilliant.
Listen, we usually don't take super strong positions here. Just dumping on someone. No. Jack is wrong.
It's an absurd example. But I love it.
I like how Jack says come back in 100 years. Bilal, the three I mentioned, penicillin, semiconductors, internet, or something else. Go ahead.
Yeah. Penicillin, basically antibiotics though, right? Or like those sort of medicines. So we'd say semiconductors. Obviously, I feel like the obvious answer, we would all naturally just think internet because of how much has exponentially changed since then. But I guess probably penicillin, antibiotics probably takes it just because of how many people that's impacted, right? Like, and how much, if you just think of the actual impact of how many people were just dying of getting a cut, basically.
Dude, I was literally about to say that. You used to die when you got a paper cut.
Yeah.
Literally.
That's wild. That's wild.
And the way that penicillin was found, it was an accident. Basically found a mold in a lab. I forgot the guy's name. I think Fleming or something. But here's my point. I'll add something. So Bilal actually picked a more reasonable one.
I'm still laughing at Jack. There's no second best.
Bilal, did you have a hold on? Bilal, did you have another thing though? Because what I like what Jack did, which is I do appreciate, he went outside of the three that the internet gave.
No, of course. Well, I will say it. So similar
you want
to
to tune up that model on Barely.
Yeah. He didn't even include Bitcoin.
No. You want to know so funny? Jack would be prompt engineering it until it said Bitcoin.
Yeah. What would the next question be? What would Michael Saylor say is the greatest invention of all
and
time?
what would create the hardest asset in the world? Go ahead, Bilal.
So, Trung, similar to you, I did type it into a large language model. And the other ones I'll mention here, it said television, antibiotics, nuclear power is interesting. That's a yeah. I mean, we'll come back to that. Transistors.
No, that's a really
Yeah. Space exploration technology, interesting. I probably wouldn't say that, but someone who knows more about it might. GPS, microchips, renewable energy technologies, DNA sequencing and genome mapping.
Because I think those
printing, I'm
things,
not sure
to
about
Jack's point, ask me in 100 years is the point.
That's the point.
Full
Well, yeah, I think even
of genome sequencing.
I think it should be 100 years and ever. I think it should be 100 years and ever.
Last
to
100,
quantify
okay.
the question.
Yeah.
Double entry accounting. You know, shit
Double
like that.
entry, bro.
There we go.
Double
There we go.
entry accounting. Oh my, love that one.
That's a
I
big
would
one.
so Trung, my final answer.
See, you
if
like
this
that
was
one, but you don't like Bitcoin.
Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? My final answer
That's a good
is
point.
antibiotics / the pills. Basically,
That's
the
great.
stuff
That's
that
great.
stops
Yeah.
us from dying at 27 versus 77.
I want to add a couple points here. I love what. So first of all, Jack just brought up a good point. I got a hard on when he said double ledger accounting or double entry accounting, and then Jack's like,
CFA fan came out there.
So you like double entry accounting, but you don't like explain this to. So he made a great point. What did double entry accounting do? It literally seeded capitalism, invented in Venice, and everything that came through that. And people want to hate on capitalism. It created a system where you could properly track money, which is just information, right? Jack, what is money? When Jack told me to listen to
13 hours.
Yeah. What is money, right? It's a way to transfer information. And double entry accounting was one of the key inventions in that. So I want to point out two things.
I would clarify and say transfer energy. Because that's
transfer energy.
Yeah.
Well, Jack listed off a couple of things, so I want to add two more thoughts about the last
Sugar
100
cube
years.
Tesla, one might say as well.
Well, in 100 years, that will be the answer.
Yeah.
So, Jack, you mentioned a couple of things that are quite interesting. Actually, you mentioned nuclear energy and the pill. Was that you, Bilal?
No, Bilal said that.
That's that. Okay. I'll tell you some other ones. There's different ways to cut this up and tease it, right? If you're looking from, I think penicillin is a Maslow hierarchy type of answer, right? You can't enjoy the fruits of Bitcoin or saving money if you're dead. So that's hitting a certain level, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where nuclear energy actually gets interesting. I'll tell you what the atomic bomb and the splitting of the atom did is geopolitically, you could argue that the invention of the atom bomb, the amount of lives it affected, right? Did it stop certain wars from happening? Right? Because now you have nuclear deterrence and people have mutually assured destruction. The idea that if you America never invaded the Soviet Union during the Cold War because everybody's afraid that we just nuked the entire world, right? So people have done calculations. How many lives did you save from that? Yes, certainly many smaller scale conflicts led to the death of tens of millions of people. But could it have been worse or not? We don't know because of the threat. So that's an interesting one. The other one that I don't know which one it says you mentioned, the pill is an interesting one from a cultural standpoint. So what did the pill do? The pill allowed women, which for 10,000s of years could not control the reproductive cycle. And what has been the sociological implications of that over the past 5 decades? Women entering the workforce, delaying families, becoming the primary breadwinner. How's that changed? I think there's many ways to look at the most important inventions, but I think all these things and the communication stuff, radio, television. So I think, like Bilal said, this could have been its own freaking episode because each of these would have their own award, right? It's like the most culturally influential, the pill, the most geopolitically important, nuclear bomb, the most important period, penicillin. So
you got to pick one.
Great question. Yeah. Well, Bitcoin. So Jack,
Bitcoin, yeah.
Jack had a thought.
So funny.
Jack, did you have any more thoughts on the past 100 years?
No, I gave you my 100-year one. And
But do you have any more thoughts on like these other things that we discussed?
No, you did very eloquently described it, and I think this is just an infinite rabbit hole, basically. But I think that I would like to be put on record as obviously the invention of products that extend and preserve life are incredibly important.
Yeah. Fair. I like that. Sounds like backtracking
Jack
to me.
Put his
but
hands up. Yeah, he just what? He's like the Homer Simpson meme. He's coming. He's like, listen, Bitcoin.
Yeah. The second order effects of certain technologies are yet to be unveiled.
Yeah. That'll be another question for the future, though. I do like that. Obviously, you were messing around a little bit there.
We'll come back to episode 10,000, boys.
Exactly. We'll see.
Replay on when we're cryogenically podcasting.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, we're
because
just all
we bought enough Bitcoin to get access to the cryogenic freezer, right, boys? We can still transmit NIA.
There we go. That would work by then. All right. Perfect. All right. Great first question. I can't remember who asked that, but great question. Whoever.
Well, let's talk about the other ones. Though. We got all time now. So.
Oh yeah, go on.
Yeah. So let's tee it up. Bilal,
all time. I mean, the wheel is an interesting one, though. Without the wheel, how much would have? How much happened with the wheel? I mean, electricity obviously is a big one, but
printing press.
You know what this is?
Printing press is a big one too.
We got to talk about. Yeah, we have to talk here about Michael Saylor, the What Is Money series. The history of mankind is about energy, right? That's the history of mankind. The history of the human race is about finding sources of energy and using them efficiently. What did the wheel do? Transport a machinery. You could travel much further than you could otherwise, right? And the wheel obviously led to the different types of leverage you can do to build things. Super important. Well, that takes us back. Fire. What does fire do? We've talked about it on the podcast. Why is fire actually an important invention? Obviously, the warmth level. What's the other part? You can cook. So now you can eat a dead cow or a dead piece of meat, and instead of burning all the calories chewing it,
Jack, you laughing because he says let him cook or what?
Yeah, let him cook.
Exactly. Let him cook. Me too. Yeah.
Just let me go.
Isn't that crazy how our brains have been taken over? Like a normal phrase is just like I laughed as well. And it's anytime. Yeah, that wasn't a Trunk specific one. But sorry, Trunk.
I'm just also laughing about how we're talking about the invention of fire on this podcast.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah, we've got a lot of range.
Our opinions on this. Yeah.
That is why it's the parody. There you go.
Actually, you want to know what's funny? Here, you know what? We can be a little bit more. We can get a little bit more serious about this. But you guys all seen the chart, right? It's like the human GDP. It all blows up in the 1800s, right? It's because steam engine. Steam engine is the invention of the steam engine.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, the James Watt and the steam engine. You all been to the Science Museum in London, right? People go to the Science Museum.
That's a great
museum.
Look.
Yeah, it's an unbelievable museum
for kids, especially, but for anyone.
For kids. So what happened with the steam engine, right? Oh, sorry, James Watt improved it. Thomas Newcomen invented it. It kicked off the Industrial Revolution. Now you can use coal, create steam, and you just have we're talking about energy here. The amount of energy that you can produce is unheard of for the human race. This is why this dinky little island that my two co-hosts here come from took over the world, right? This is why they had a lot of coal. This dinky little island in like the North Sea takes over the world, runs colonies in 25% of the known landmass because they found coal and figured out they can create energy with it. But I'm gonna, I will say, and I'll tee it off for you. What Jack mentioned it, the printing press, because this podcast. Last episode we're talking about X. Jack's
it would be no NIA without the printing press.
The printing press. We need to talk about the printing press, people. The distribution and dissemination of ideas, right? We love the internet here. The printing press was the internet of the 1450s. Johann Gutenberg, this gentleman.
Say 1450s. I love that you knew the decade.
1450s. What did he do?
The most Trung Phan thing. Is 1454. This printing press.
You know what? Let me give Jack here. Jack, you want to let me cook? Let me cook on the printing press a bit.
Please do.
Why was the printing press such a important invention? It was actually nominated as the number one in Life magazine, called it the number one invention when they did the 1999 greatest inventions ever. What were people doing to communicate ideas before the printing press? You would have anointed individuals. You would have the elite class. You would have the Harvard professors of their day. They were scholars of the Bible. You would have, in a town, you'd have one literate person, and he'd be reading to you this immaculate book written by God. And he would tell you what it said. What did the printing press do? It gave access to that immaculate knowledge, whatever you think of the Bible, to any single person that wanted it. And Johann Gutenberg's Bible, everybody knows that name. He's like, oh man, it takes a really long time to make books. You use them by hand. What if I just look at this grape press, because he lived near a winery. What if I just took the technology of this grape press to press books? Okay? That's what he did.
Isn't it? Wow.
So and now we're talking about how innovation
works.
works. And now let me add one more thing for Jack to cook on, because I know this is right down in Jack's realm. When Jack said Jack mentioned earlier, we don't even know the effects of technology yet. We don't even you know how early days the internet is? We're like 30 years in the internet. Okay, so what happened with the printing press? It unlocked and took away power from the church, because now the church was no longer the monopoly holder of knowledge of God. So what happened to Christianity? It splintered. Protestants used the ability to be like, you know what? We can read the Bible ourselves. We think you're interpreting it incorrectly. The Vatican, the Roman Church. You might know a gentleman by the name of Martin Luther, German founder of Protestantism, right? So this is why the printing press, and this is what happened to the printing press. And 200 years after the invention of the printing press, you had the religious wars in Europe, which killed 30 years war. Count how many people were killed in 30 years war. This is what happens when information is distributed. I mean, this is an amoral judgment. That's a bad thing that happened, right? Millions of people in Western Europe died from the religious wars, and it all started from the printing press 200 years later. So that's me done cooking.
That was very good. Great job, Trung. I don't have anything else to add. I think that wins. Anything else there?
Well, you know, the only thing that came in my mind when you were explaining that was Starlink. You know why? Just like, I mean, there's still this massive centralization argument with that, right? It's one dude. But the idea of there are still controlled channels of information. There are like that technology sort of concentrates power in a way that maybe in some ways implies a democratization of stuff, but it also is like creates this massive reliance on very, very narrow, singular point of failure things. So don't have time to go down the whole rant on that, but the like independently owned infrastructure for communication is still not
censorship
like a thing, right?
resistant.
Right, exactly. Very nicely put.
Well, let me add one last thought about what I didn't say about the printing press. What happens when you take the monopoly away from the church? You empower science. When did the scientific revolution happen? In the 1500s, after the invention of the printing press. So the power of the church is being just picked away at. And then you're allowing the flourishing of human knowledge. That's why the printing press is the most important invention. It led to the scientific revolution.
Good answer.
So there we go.
That was great. No, really, really good. All right, let's move on to the second question. This is a fun one. This, again, I think we can, instead of us all giving an answer each, I think we can have a discussion and pick 5 people. So if there was a Shark Tank for NIA, you've all watched Shark Tank or Dragon's Den in the UK, right? If it's that style TV show or internet show, and you had to pick 5 judges, that roster, who is going to beat it? We're going to come up with these together real quick. Number one, we're obviously putting Sailor in it. We know that's going to be, just first of all, because my criteria for this is who's entertaining, who has a unique point of view that is interesting to listen to, but also entertaining. who understands the kind of world we're in, because this is for NIA audience. So that's kind of, and obviously, people of note. So I'm starting obviously saying Michael Saylor, because we need those zingers, the sugar-powered Tesla sugar cube. We need those zingers on the TV or YouTube. I have a few others, but I'll let you guys say anyone else coming to mind.
Yeah. No, we're doing the draft right now. That's a great... Bilal, I love how you set this up, man. Very well done.
I have to say, this is an AMA question from me. I came up with this question, or I heard it somewhere else. Nice. And so I thought it's kind of a fun discussion. So Jack, and also I'll also say living or dead. Like it could be someone in the past as well.
Yeah, I have Jack, go ahead. Your next pick. We're filling out the roster here, boys.
So these are the 5 panelists that are hearing the pitches.
Yeah, the pitches.
Am I understanding that right?
NIA Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Gotta hit Naval. We gotta get Naval on there.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Would be a nice contrast to Saylor as well.
Contrast.
Yeah. Now, could you imagine those two have they ever had a conversation? Those two.
I don't know. Not that I don't know.
Someone must have done that. Someone needs to create an AI version of that at least. Just can you imagine the zingers back and forth? All right. Naval's next. So right now we're doing a short list and we're going to decide together, but that's Naval. Trung, who's your next pick?
We should just we're going through 5 right now.
Yeah, go
on. Rick Rubin.
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
We're picking who are the patron saints of NIA, right? Is he guys who ideas we like? So solid roster right now. Bilal, you're up. Yeah, let's just do 2 each.
Okay, Rick Rubin is a good one. Okay, I'm going to throw Mr. Beast in there.
Okay.
Not necessarily because I personally find him entertaining, because I respect him a lot, but I don't find his style entertaining. But to get that next generation and to get the YouTube native audience involved, I think he would be a good judge as well. Even just understanding certain parts of the new internet and video specifically, I think he would be an interesting example. And what do we say on there? Distribution wins, and we want this NIA show to be successful. So he has the most distributions on YouTube. So I think he would be a good addition to the squad.
It's a good one.
That's a good one.
Skip me, Trung, you go.
I will say, because the other criteria that I've added is just what is a good running joke for our show, right? Is who kind of represents either all of us or one of us. I'd say Robert Caro, the biographer for the Lyndon B. Johnson books and the Power Broker.
That's very specific.
He's a history guy. He's a history guy.
Yeah, okay,
right?
History guy. Okay,
so that's what I mean. Is that's very that's.
What about Dan Carlin, the hardcore history guy? Do you reckon he could be a good addition?
He could be
for the history angle. But that's a good shout.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because the Rick Rubin was kind of all of us were into this kind of woohoo thinking.
Well, that's a good angle. And the other angle I'd add, and maybe Jack, this might bring some people to mind, is the hip hop culture angle or culture angle.
I got mine.
Go on.
Kim Kardashian.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't say Andrew Tate again, because I got a few comments about that.
Distribution.
Smart. We also need some women on there, by the way.
I was about to say, that's like a DEI pick right there.
Yeah.
That's a DEI
I'm
pick.
saying, I mean, you're also
That's a good pick.
The ability to evaluate an idea not based on its technical fundamentals, which is, maybe people talking about the invention of the dam and the, eagles knocking goats off mountains, which I'm sure Kim Kardashian would be well versed in and has listened to, but in touch with consumer culture and in touch with 85% of the buying power in the northern.
Oh, there we go. Okay, great pick. I think that's a good pick.
Back to the Stanley episode last week. Yeah,
exactly right.
All right, so that's a great pick. I like that, Kim K. And then Trung, for both of you, I'm going to say, I think we talk a lot about culture on the pod. And I think personally, there's lots of different parts of culture, but I think hip hop culture has a disproportionate impact on certain parts of society and the world. And cool, from the music factor, fashion now as well, with streetwear, etc., and even entertainment with a lot of the producers and stuff that's being made. So I would say we need one person to represent that. Now I'll give a little short list, and you guys tell me if anyone else comes to mind, or if one of them fits. So I'd say Virgil Abloh, even though he's passed away.
You took the words out of my mouth.
I think Virgil will probably be it. There's also Jay-Z.
That's a great one, yeah.
Jay-Z is, obviously still around and interesting. And then I'm just going to throw 50 Cent in there just because he's on a roll right now. And he's funny. Like, he says a lot of funny stuff.
Oh, he's funny.
If Kanye West wasn't cancelled so much, that would have been a good, a few years ago, Kanye would have been perfect for
ingredient.
That entertainment factor, but like, you don't want to be getting cancelled. The show needs to keep going. And also with Kim there, you got to pick one or the other, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Or you just go full send and put them both in. So I think the answer probably is Virgil though, yeah? R.I.P.
Yeah, recipes Virgil. Yeah, let's just pay respects to the man.
All right, there we go. Exactly. That's the last one. And then, and then last one I've got in here is Old Matey, which is Arnaud. Bernard Arnaud. So I don't know if we got 5 there, but we did a few more. But I thought it was kind of a funny question just because. All right, let's keep it moving then, yeah? So I think that was a nice one. All right, starting professional career. We've talked about this a little bit before, so tell me if you have anything more to add here, boys. And if not, we can give a short one. Someone asked, advice for someone starting their professional career, especially around diversifying risk. I'm very bullish on crypto, but feel I can invest in crypto while working in an uncorrelated industry to diversify my bags. So I will say we've talked a lot about starting career and career advice before. So this is specifically about diversifying risk. And if you've got an interest in, say, crypto, especially as we're going into a bull run, what's your opinion on, do you go all in and start working in it, or do you do a little bit of both? Any thoughts?
I'd like to frame in the question because we have talked about this in the past. I just want to add one thing before Jack gets into his answer. Something that Jack had mentioned on a previous similar question was, because I think we all started being like, oh yeah, create media, like build a brand. And then Jack actually said something to the effect of, that's just a bubble for us, right? It's just like, that was just like not, that's a world we live in. So I just want to say, like, that's not going to be my answer this time. I'm going to actually give a CFA related answer after Jack gives his answer on this risk mitigation thing.
I think the answer is the only thing you could do to mitigate risk is to build skills that are transferable. And to stop thinking about industry first and start thinking about, competency first and your inherent ability or how interested you are in certain things. Like for me, the idea of design as a tool to get a point across was always the feedback loop that I got stuck in that was most interesting to me. And then crypto as a quote unquote industry happened to end up there because of all the parallels. I like that you put it in air
quotes, by the way.
Yeah. Well, I hate that term. I hate the term when people say like industry, like, oh, money is an industry, or like, like it's not an industry, is it? It's a set of tools, a bunch of infrastructure that you would have to build something that people want. Like, I'm not in the crypto industry. If anything, I'm in the design industry, and even design industry makes my toes curl too, because everybody who makes anything is in the design industry, right? It's like all things when you come out of school or when you're young that you look at the world this way because you have to pick something, and that's understandable, right? You want to go and like put your energy towards something, and that's like a job title or an industry or something that you can focus on. But in many ways, when I look back at the stuff I've done, the secondary thing was the job or the thing that or the person or the brand that I was doing it for. And the primary thing was like, what is the skill that I am honing while I'm doing this? Like selling shit, right? If you learn how to sell, Bilal, I think guys start in sales, like doesn't matter if you're selling haircuts or computer chips or houses or whatever it is you're doing, right? The set of principles that make you a good salesman remain the same. Be personable, understand what the problem is, articulate it in an incredibly compelling way, provide great service, blah, blah, blah. So this is not me trying to give a non-answer. This is me saying, like, if you're interested in crypto, to interface with it in a meaningful way, you need a skill set that allows you to bring something to a team, a product, anybody that's building anything that it's merely an ingredient, right? Your ability to contribute is based on a skill set that would be valuable in another place, even if it's like hyper technical, like even writing software. Whatever you learn writing software for X industry is going to be transferable for the most part, principle wise. Like here's how information architecture works. Here's how you build a database. Here's how you do blah, blah, blah. Maybe the last 30% of that knowledge is customized. But if you're at the beginning of your career, you just want to be in an environment where you can be as effective as possible and get as much feedback from reality as possible. That's what I would optimize for. If I could go back, I would say like optimize for as much feedback as you can possibly get in the shortest period of time. And that will even help you figure out what you want to do. Like I worked in industrial printers, being a salesperson and customer support, but I was just dog shit at it. Like I hated fielding these phone calls from people that are like, you just, messed up my order, blah, blah. I was like, I'm not good at this. Like, I'm not going to force I already had some like design experience. I was like, man, imagine what it'd be like if I could just design stuff all day. I'm not like field complaints. Field complaints for shit that I had nothing to do with in the first place. And some people are incredible at that and they should put themselves in that environment. But even going into an environment that doesn't fit your skill set or your desires is going to help you filter that out. Like the Nassim Taleb via negativa, you figure out what you want to do by removing the stuff that you don't want to do. So that's a ramble, but that would be my
that's
advice.
Great. No, and I'll just, Trung, I know you had a CFA answer, but I'll just add really quickly to Jack's, because as you started saying that, I literally wrote build skills in the doc as well. So I completely agree with what you said. I think the key answer to this is it really depends on the person, obviously. So that's a non-answer as well. But I'm assuming it's early in your career, because you said starting professional career. If you had said, I'm way into my career and I want to do X, Y, Z, I think the answer is completely different. So I think it really depends on the stage of your career, especially in the first, like, let's say 5-10 years is really about like the skill, like just build, maybe it's 5 years, like 5 years of solid work where you're really building one big tangible skill that you can go and take anywhere. For me, that has been marketing or something like that, digital marketing. I could pretty much go into most companies, understand what they're doing and get them to grow through marketing or sales or partnerships. Jack obviously has that with design and all that sort of stuff. Trung has his versions of that as well. So it's just, I think that having that tangible thing gives you the ability to say, I can go add value kind of anywhere. That helps a lot. And then builds on what Jack said there around the industry. To me is kind of not secondary completely, because I think it is important, because I do think you want to be in an industry that has a lot of upside, and growth potential is a big part of that. So not just in terms of money and stuff like that, but also just you learn a lot more in a faster moving environment. So if you compare a crypto company or a startup, a tech startup versus, Procter & Gamble, nothing wrong with Procter & Gamble, but they've been doing the same thing for a very long time. And so the challenges you get there is a bit different. You're using new stuff and applying it to an older place. So you might prefer that. For some people, they actually prefer that style of work. So it just depends on your interests and what you're most focused on. I don't think there's anything wrong with not working in crypto if you're into it. Keep buying it on the side, like you said, not investment advice. And keep learning about it, keep playing with stuff, keep listening to the podcast and other podcasts to understand that world. And it might get to a point again where, to be honest, in the last bull run, how many of us were like, I'd work in crypto, and I thought that at times as well. So I think maybe the time will come when that starts to feel like more of a pull, not just like you have to run towards it, but like it's really pulling you in the direction. Trung, what was your CFA answer, or anything else to add, mate?
No, I love kind of we gave more general answers here, right? We didn't like directly answer it. But I think that's good, because that's more applicable. No, there's all I was going to say about the CFA stuff, and it was kind of mentioned. I think actually the way you framed it, but one of you guys mentioned barbell. Like, it's like, that's literally the CFA, like financial planning angle. Is like here, let me put it this way. When you study the CFA, the part that actually stuck out for me is this, is like, do you actually know, for the average person, their most important asset is their ability to earn, right? It's like people, there's just mindsets like, hey, we can throw in some shit coins at 100x, but like actually just think about your actual earning potential. is what will matter. Like this is how the life insurance industry works, right? Is like you get life insurance when you're young to compensate for the amount of income that you might earn over the expanse of your life. What that has to do with the risk angle is this: if you work in a really risky industry, you're going to want to counterbalance it somehow, right?
Oh yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's things. If you actually have listen, I know a lot of people are in office jobs that suck. Like I've done it. We've all done it. We didn't like that. That wasn't for us. But a lot of people in those situations. So what you should be doing, and we joke about this, is if you're in that type of thing where you get the steady pay, even if you don't like it, you can degen on the side because that thing you have, the core of it is financially not risky. And your life earning potential is financially not risky. So you could take risks in our other elements. So I put it like that.
Yeah. No, that's a great way to put it, actually. Yeah, so much of this is going to be so specific to the person, their stage of their career, how much money they have, if they got kids. Like, there's all these different details, but I think we covered the best we can there. Great question. Nice angle. This one is for Jack. We were talking about this a second ago. This is a couple Jack-centric questions. Which design trends from 2023 are you hoping to see more of in 2024?
Good question.
We're seeing across the board, and the second question, we're seeing across the board design improvements in virtually every industry. Better websites, better packaging, UI, UX improvements and uniformity, etc. Presuming that AI accelerated design tools and agencies clean up the rest of this low-hanging fruit in the next few years, what do you think the work of designers might look like in 2030? Pretty good question. They're two very different questions. So first one is design trends, what you want to see more of. And the second one was about the future of if AI ends up cleaning up a lot of bad design, I guess, or something like that. So I don't know. Yeah, if you have any thoughts on that, Jack.
Man, the trends question is so hard. I think it depends on where you work or what your specific focus is in design. And when in UI specifically, like when you're designing websites or when you're designing applications, there are UX and UI patterns that are just like, here's where people expect to see this button, right? If you're going to design a site, like the login button should be in the top right, blah, 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 blah. And that the paradox in this answer is like, the less on trend it is, the more interesting it might be, right? It's like people that are willing to do stuff that doesn't abide by any traditional pattern are the only people that are going to ever create something that sort of carves a new path or makes something new and interesting and eventually splinters off into new stuff. So like almost I would give the opposite answer of like people who completely invert a trend are probably like, I would like to see more of that. And I think the commodification of the execution process in design maybe leads us in that direction anyway, right? Where much less of the labor is in the actual production and more in the imagination. So in theory, you should get more visual variance on the back end through that. But you could also make the argument that everything goes more monolithic and samey if it's coming out of the same LLM models, over and over again. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard question to answer, but me personally having access to these models, I've been able to do stuff in software that was previously completely gated to me behind 5 years of experience, right? Like I wouldn't even attempt to learn this stuff. So
could you give an example, Jack? I'm curious what you mean.
Yeah, I used when I did the Red Bull stuff, I used this library called P5, the JavaScript library, where you can basically program visual art. So you can set all the parameters and output all these different variations of an algorithm that creates different types of art. And I would be able to, like a year ago, 2 years ago, I would be able to spec that to a developer and say, hey, here's the output I'm looking for. Can you reverse engineer the code of this? But now start from scratch describing that to ChatGPT, and along the way, adding a line of code at a time, modifying this algorithm by piece by piece. There are all these things that are in my mind that I want to get onto the screen or out into the world in some way that have been completely, maybe even stylistically off limits for me because I don't have as a designer, you get a style, right? 10,000 reps, like you have a way of working that if you've done enough reps, people recognize your work as yours from 1,000 paces away. Like I actually had this critique when I was in school. I might have talked about this on the pod before, where when I came out of design school, my teachers were always like, you have to like diversify your style, because you're going to have to work for one day you're working on a clothing brand, the next day you're working on a, telecommunication company. You have to be able to vary your styles, and it always looks like your stuff. And that was a critique then, but now it's like, I'm sort of glad that I stuck to it. Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. I wonder if there were people I was so jealous of at the beginning of my career, because they could just, like, I would look at someone and be like, wow, that's like exactly what I would do if I could just like reverse engineer what I think it should look like, but it always came out in my style. So I hope that these tools create more variance in people's work, but the result remains to be seen, right? Because the commodification and the like repetition of certain, like every Mid-Journey image looks like a Mid-Journey image, for example, right? It amplifies your ability to make something, but it's got this self-fulfilling feedback loop that makes everything look more and more similar. So yeah, it's kind of a non-answer for that. And then what was the second one?
That was a good answer, but so as AI is essentially accelerating those design tools and cleaning up the rest of this low-hanging fruit in the next few years, what do you think the work of designers might be in 5-10 years?
Okay,
let's say? Yeah. So what was it? So I think just while you're thinking about that, the thing you said there about imagination versus creation or something like that, I can't remember exactly. Production, yeah, that stood out to me, because imagination is still a rare commodity in a way, and I'll be interested to hear your approach on what can AI have imagination as well,
I think
or
that's
is that
the answer.
still the human part?
Well, no, I think that's the answer. I think like the work of a designer is like, it changes the set of eventualities at the beginning of the process, right? Like if you're pitching work, you're like, okay, I'm going to pitch these 3 concepts. Here's the ideas, and it's going to take me this long to get a visual that represents the thing I'm trying to say. So we were going to a pitch meeting. It's like, you have to have the ideas cooked a week before, because then you have to either yourself sit down and make the image that represents the idea, or you have to hire somebody that's like storyboarding a commercial, for example, is like 5 years ago, we were paying $1,500 a sketch to get like a 12 sketch storyboard for an ad. Now you can prompt that in, and I haven't worked in a commercial environment like this for a while, so I imagine this is already happening. And if the person asking the question already doing this, then I'm not really giving any new information. But that's how I see it being different, is way more like mental leverage versus like physical production work. And then just the power law comes into play then, where the best person at whatever now has this superhuman ability to leverage their imagination and create at speed. For like, I think this example where I was able to build something in code that was previously impossible for me to do is an example of that, where I have the ability to just put that out because I already built a network, and that as an experience was very eye-opening in like what AI can do to augment your imagination as a designer. And this is not new, but like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, Bilal, you probably remember this, 10 years ago, is like, every company should be a design-centric company. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like, it's a crazy thing that people are like eventually
you could insert
out,
any other word there, like tech-enabled, AI-enabled now, or like there are no internet-enabled companies. We're all internet companies, and it's like, not really. You're still selling Coca-Cola, but it depends on design. You're right, is different because you're designing something. You design some sort of product, aren't you?
Yeah, so like the idea of being able to convey your ideas faster with more scale, more iterations, blah, blah. Just everybody has access to this at the same time. So it feels to me like it just increases the volume and quality in the same way that like making a poster 80 years ago would be, you're spending a month putting one letter block in next to the next one and carving out the next letter. It's like,
it's crazy, right?
We always, I think we've talked about this a few times.
Printing press.
Exactly. There you go. We're always saying like, this is going to kill so many jobs, blah, blah, blah. But it's just like the amount we produce and consume just goes fucking exponential every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be.
It just gives superpowers to the people who know how to use it.
We forgot to include this, but that great Paul Graham tweet where he quote tweeted the F1 engine. And he's like,
the Mercedes.
Incredible technology. Yeah. Incredible technology often reaches its absolute peak right before it becomes obsolete, which is, we'll just leave the conversation there because I think that gives people a lot of things to think about. But it's like that's almost a contrasting point where you think about technologies that are so ubiquitous and we don't see them ever going away, and then something gets introduced that is basically their death certificate, and then over the next few years they're just gone. F1, I actually don't know if that's a good example because it seems like that's just getting started fandom wise, but the combustion engine for the average consumer is probably on getting towards a downward slope.
Yeah. Great way to summarize that. All right, let's do a couple more and then we'll wrap it here. So this one was, I can't remember who wrote this, but this was on psychedelics. So tell me if you guys are all right talking about this, but it says, not sure if this is something you guys would be comfortable speaking about, but curious to know where the three of you stand on psychedelics, with substances like MDMA, psilocybin, ketamine becoming far less taboo, especially across the tech sector, regulation beginning to loosen, and venture money pouring in. It certainly appears that we're in the early innings of a legitimate renaissance. How do you see this playing out, and is society ready for it? I don't
we kind of semi-touched on this. We kind of touched on it with trends, but we didn't. It's actually a good thing that we didn't go deeper on that.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Trung?
Absolutely. So Plain English podcast with Derek Thompson actually had an interesting podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was with a Stanford professor that had done a study, as Bilal mentioned, ketamine. The reason why ketamine's in the news is, you guys remember Matthew Perry from Friends?
Yeah.
So he died. It turns out he had ketamine in his system, but it was for pharmaceutical treatment reasons. And it just wasn't mixing well, or he had taken the wrong dosage.
Well, sorry, can I just add on that? Because I read into that. Because I saw the headline sounded like that. And then when you go into it, he was using that for therapy, for treating depression, which is very common nowadays becoming more common, prescribed, but he was an addict, so that was another part of it.
He was an alcoholic. A
lot of people had said he shouldn't have ever been prescribed that. And the second part was, it sounds like the dosage was way more than just like what he was supposed to be doing. And it was like a week after his last one. So I think it sounded like maybe he was taking it recreationally or like out of the hours where he was supposed to be taking it. And I think he had a K-hole and just drowned or whatever, something like that.
I think the large underlining thing is, I just want to add on what Bilal was saying. It's like, all of this, just please, for the love of God, be careful, talk to your medical provider.
Exactly.
Right? Like, I mean, that's the larger underlying current. And the question itself, it asks, what are the risks? So there are clearly risks, right? Is like, so Sam Harris, who I know Bilal has spoken on, we've all done Waking Up, right? We've all done the Waking Up podcast. Yeah. So Sam Harris is a big proponent of psychedelics, MDMA, and not like a big proponent. He's like, I think his whole point is that people should use these drugs at least once or twice. They've been proven very good for treatments in like PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome, for like war veterans. And the reason Sam Harris pushes it is because whatever you think about him, his Waking Up podcast, the whole point of it is about mindfulness, right? And just
and he's a neuroscientist, right?
He's a neuroscientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like, it basically can show you there's a whole new way to think about the world, like identity, like seeing yourself outside of yourself. It's actually a very powerful thing. So yeah, I mean, what I've talked about in the past, I've done shrooms in the past. It's been a long time since I've actually done it. I did it in college recreationally with some buddies. Same with MDMA. I haven't done it in a very long time. And what I would say is, the treatments are becoming more legalized under the watch of medical professionals.
Yeah.
And it's for these aspects though. It's like for treating PTSD, for treating depression, because they are finding that these
massive
drugs
breakthroughs with that. Yeah.
They're doing something, right? They're rewiring chemical pathways. And the one warning I'd have is, and Bilal kind of mentioned it, is you kind of want to do a lot of these things with somebody that's done it before, or, a lot of these things are done under supervision, because you see some wild shit if the dosage isn't correctly, and like you literally see some wild shit.
And everyone reacts differently, right? And like there's a lot, especially when it comes to like for this use case. And so I'll just add really quickly, I was actually listening to Tim Ferriss. Kevin Rose did a pod on Tim Ferriss' podcast
Tim
recently.
Ferriss is big on this, right? He's done
he's like done a lot of funding
research.
for it. He's experimented, both of them have. And they were talking about, I think, ketamine therapy or something like that. And I know a few people, I haven't done therapy with this, but I know a few people who have. And so the one thing I'll mention is Michael Pollan has a book, How to Change Your Mind. And if you don't want to read the whole book, watch the Netflix series. I really highly recommend it if you guys haven't checked it out. I think it's like 4 parts, and each episode is a different one. So it's like mushroom, psilocybin, MDMA, and then there's a couple others. And they show real life examples of where they're using this for breakthroughs. And the one that stood out to me is quite an interesting one. I was actually speaking to a therapist friend about it. It's like literally 2 days ago. And just before I left New York, a friend of mine has left their normal regular career and becoming a therapist, and one of the driving factors for that is because she had experimented with this sort of psychedelic stuff and with therapy, and it changed her life basically. And so what she said is there's a lot of people were doing this thing where mushrooms can basically take that ego side away from you. So when you're talking to therapists, if you guys ever done it, half of the thing is just getting in the frame of mind where you can go deep and talk about certain things, access parts of your brain, memories that you might not have thought about for a long time or suppressed, etc. And so I think from my understanding, that can help take that guard away, take that guard down essentially. But for a lot of people, like for me and you, it might be fine, right? Because we might not have that crazy dark stuff. If you've been to war, or you've seen your friend's head blown off, or like something crazy like PTSD, let's say, going deep can be really traumatic for you. So that's why in this example, they showed where they used psilocybin to go deep with the supervision of that person to kind of navigate them through that mental maze. But then they used the MDMA to kind of lift them a little bit, because that's serotonin, I think?
That's how the treatment, yeah.
So that gave them a little bit more of a lift so that they could actually approach that in a soft way, and they could make a lot of progress.
You're dropping some knowledge right now, man.
Yeah. It's just something I want to do a few pods on it on Create Lab eventually, because this really seems really interesting. I haven't really experimented too much with it in terms of therapy stuff. I have recreationally, but that's the other thing I'd say is there's some people who just want to hear, oh, drugs can be good for you, therefore, and just go crazy on some stuff, right? Like it doesn't mean you go and do a bunch of mushrooms or MDMA and your life is fixed. It can be used as a tool. And the other thing is I think getting it therapeutically done is a big upgrade, because you're not getting some random stuff cut in there, right? Like a lot of recreational drugs have all sorts of crap in there. So you got to be careful with that sort of stuff.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I wanted to jump on something you said, and then one comment I wanted to pass to Jack, but do you want to finish your thought?
No, the last thing I was just going to say is my overall summary of it is I'm very curious, and seems like there's a lot of good there that I'm curious to explore more. But with all these things, there's a lot of downsides too. So I know that there's going to be another story where we're like, oh, that person, it went in the wrong direction for them. And as more people do it, you're going to get both of those examples. But I think it's a massive unlock for society if we get there.
I totally agree with the assessment, or with the addendum on the risk. And the thing I want to jump on specifically, you said, was the ego thing, because that's what Sam Harris always talks about, right? It's actually when you realize, in his whole position, I know a lot of people won't agree with it. He's like, when you watch The Watchers, what he says, you realize that like there is no actual identity there. It's like it's kind of
the self
driven into you, the idea of the self, and actually doing these drugs is actually the best way to illustrate to anyone, because you get
access to that, right?
Yeah, you'll get access. Certain chemical pathways will hit, and then you'll realize it's like, oh, every way I've thought my entire life, this 3-hour like period, I'm going through this like, the high is not the right word. It's like whatever it is.
Experience
like,
or whatever.
The experience is like, wow, there is literally another way to look at the self, right? So that's what I wanted to jump on yours, the Sam Harris part. The thing I want to add before we ask Jack about this was is on the business side, because the question did ask about venture funding. What I would say about the business side, I think like if you're looking like a pure business analysis on this, I don't actually think it's a good business. It's because if you have one breakthrough, you're done, right? This is like the problem that dating apps have and the tension they have. What's the problem with a lot of dating apps, or what is kind of a problem? If you get and you match somebody perfectly, they don't need your app anymore, right?
Because they got to get that SaaS subscription model going, bro. They got to get the
second Carla Stanley Cup.
Yeah. No, you need the bi-weekly maintenance dose for people. No, I know what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? It's like
I think there's more use cases though where people could. It's the same way some people will still go to therapy forever,
sure,
not just for that one breakthrough. But you're right. Maybe the psychedelics help with that breakthrough.
It's not like cigarettes, right? Like cigarettes, you're smoking a pack a day. Like that's what I mean. It's like how good of a business is it actually? So that's it.
No, that's a good point. Jack, any other thoughts on that front?
I might just dilute that conversation, boys. That was good. You boys made a great point.
That was great.
I think it's the like interacting with it in a way that doesn't permanently adjust your reality in a way that you do not want it to is the huge risk.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's a fucking massive risk.
That's
that's where
it's
I'll
true,
leave
right?
it.
That's a good point, because like that, again, I won't go into personal conversations that I think we've talked about some of these things in the past. And one of the things that stood out was there's a difference between someone who really needs a change, but if you're generally feeling pretty good and you're pretty happy and you're feeling content and things are going pretty well, like you might not want to be changing your brain state too much or like messing around with it, you know? So whereas there's other people who are really struggling and like that can make them, you know, have a massive impact on them. So yeah, that's
be careful is the big
be
takeaway.
Careful. Yeah. That is advice, that one thing we'll share. All right, boys, I think we're going to have to call it here. I think that was a good way to wrap it up. We had even more, but we'll again save those for another time.
I know people enjoy these, So.
Yeah, this was really. I think this was really fun one. I enjoyed that a lot. Anything else, boys? Before we wrap it up, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks.
That was great.
No, that was great. See you guys in 2 weeks.
Yes.
Thank
Good
you.
Marathon session.
Enjoy London, mate.
All right, man. Yeah, we'll see you guys. Yeah, that just to give people a heads up, we had to record this early because I'll be flying as usual the next day. So all right, we'll see you guys on next week's episode, and appreciate all the support. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Peace out.